Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to use textures and shadows to create this effect in your lettering. So this effect was part of a thank you post I did on Instagram. So we're going to look at these portion here. It was part of the lettering I did. So again, we're just going to focus on how to create this look, this effect today. Okay, so before I get started, I just want you to explain the components, what you need in order to create this look. So really, if we break that into pieces, we are going to need one layer for outline. Oops. So you need an outline layer. And then you would need a color layer. In this case, I'm using two different colors. So I would be having one layer for the blue and another layer for the pink. But again, if you're using same color for all of them, it will just be all in one layer. And then we're gonna add some textures. So if you see here, I'm using two textures. One is more of a grainy texture. I will add description, what brush I'm using on the description box, so you could check that out. And also using a halftone texture. So those will be the two textures I'll be using, but I'll be playing with those textures here. And then we will be adding some shadows. So this is just by using a studio brush, and where that is, it comes with Procreate. If you go to inking, and then it'll be the studio pen. So that's what I'm using here. Also, I will add it in the description box below. Okay, so that's what we need. And so I'm just gonna, for demonstrate purposes, I'm just gonna use this O to show you how I do it. But again, first thing you wanna do is have a separate layer for the outline, just the outline. And then once you create that, the next step would be to create another layer below the outline. So if the outline layer is here, you're gonna go and create a color layer below that outline layer, and you're gonna color it. So in this case, it's gonna be blue. So I'm just gonna go ahead and color it blue. Okay. So once you're done with that, the next step is gonna be adding the texture. So again, the order, how it goes is you have an outline and then you color it, and then we're gonna add the textures. It doesn't matter which ordering you do. I'm just gonna order the halftone first. So from the color, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a clipping mask. So how I do that is I'm gonna create an extra layer, click that option, and then we're gonna create a clipping mask. What that is doing is whatever I draw in that layer is not gonna go over what is below, which is the color. So for example, just to demonstrate, if I were to draw a long line, again, if I create it as a clipping mask, it's not going to go outside of whatever this color shape is. So if I were to get rid of the clipping mask, you see how the line goes. But if I do the clipping mask, it's gonna stay within that color in that particular layer, okay? So I'm gonna get rid of that. So from the clipping mask, we're gonna add the texture. The brush I'm using is a halftone. B-tones, again, I will add the description. In this case, I went with white color. So I'm just gonna select the white, and you draw over it. See? You've done that, right? Okay, and then what you're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and add the second texture. So we're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna create another layer and then create a clipping mask. It's the same idea, but instead of using the halftone texture, we're gonna use a grainy one. And it's called grain shader. We use this one. We're gonna go with slightly darker color. You can stay with the same color, slightly darker. The key here is we're gonna now change the blending mode from normal to multiply. What all that means is whatever you're drawing on top is gonna be showing with the layer on the bottom. So it's kind of like using a transparent paper where it multiplies the extra color. It will see through with the color below it. So that's what multiply is. So again, all we're doing is create a separate layer, create a clipping mask, and then we're gonna multiply. You could always change the opacity to your liking, because if you just use it at 100%, it's gonna be a little bit harsh, but you could always control. So I'm just gonna, as you can see, I'm just adding the textures on the bottom part of the shape and not on the top to kind of give that shadowy effect. So I'm just gonna go, usually I do this in circular motion like this. And then the more it gets to the edge, I color in more. Like so. Okay, so did that, and again you can see how it's a little bit too much, so you can control this with the opacity level. So you can lower the opacity to whatever you feel like it looks nice. So I'm just gonna make it maybe a little bit more, just like that. Okay, so we're almost there. So now we did the outline, we did the color, we did the textures. The last thing we need to add is the shadow. But before I do that, you've noticed I also colored in this little circle area. Again, this is your choice. If you look at my original piece, I had a shadow coming out. Shadow was coming out like this. So I kind of colored that in. And I'll show you how to do that as well, just the coloring part. So this is an extra step, but nothing too crazy. You just add another layer. I just called it color 2. And I'm going a little darker color than the original blue. And then same thing, using the studio pen, you can just color it in. That's all you need to do. Now we're ready to add the shadow. Now shadow is, again, any part that, imagining the light is coming from this way, we're gonna add the shadow on the opposite end, almost making that kind of 3D effect, right? So all I'm doing here is gonna create an extra layer. We're gonna call it a shadow. And I'm gonna use the same brush, inking the studio pen, and we're just gonna draw that shadow in. Again, you can either stay with this darker color or even darker. It doesn't matter as long as you change the blending mode from normal to multiply. Okay, same thing with the textures, right? Changing it to multiply, and then you can control the opacity later. So here I added a shadow here, so I'm just gonna do the same thing. Oh, that's a little too thick. Something like this. I added a shadow here, and then I added a shadow on the outer side here, and then the inner side from here to here. Something like that, right? Again, if you want more shadow, you can make it a little bit thicker. It really depends on what kind of shadow you want to achieve. There's no right or wrong. But again, you can see that it's a little harsh. It's a little bit too dark. So that can be easily controlled from the opacity. So you're going to lower it down that you think it fits. So that's it. That's how you create this effect. For this one, I did the exact same steps with a different color. Okay, that's it. So that's how you create this effect to all your letterings, and also you can apply this to your illustration as well. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Any feedback, comments are welcome. If you want to see more of these, also let me know. Thank you so much.